Carolina church shooting after a protracted manhunt. 21-year-old Dylan Roof is arrested and taken into custody, suspected in the attack that left 9 people dead in a historic African-American church in Charleston. Eurozone finance ministers convene in Luxembourg for crunch time talks to reach a deal to prevent Greece's bankruptcy and departure from the Eurozone. As the IMF warns, Athens will be given no extension. And another so-called price tag attack in Israel. A 5th century Catholic church on the shores of the Sea of Galilee is torched. The police question 16 youths from a West Bank settlement.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the News Today. We begin tonight with South Carolina and the shooting on an historic African-American church that left 9 people dead on Wednesday night. Several developments in the last couple of hours after a drawn-out manhunt. Suspected shooter, 21-year-old Dylan Roof, has been apprehended and brought into custody as federal authorities open a hate crimes probe. Ayman Siksik has the latest.
This is the man suspected of walking into a church in Charleston, South Carolina, Wednesday evening, armed with a gun and opening fire on worshippers at prayer. The gunman left 9 people dead and a community in grief over a dramatic escalation of interracial tension in the U.S.
Until the investigation is complete, I'm necessarily constrained in terms of talking about the details of the case. But I don't need to be constrained about the emotions that tragedies like this raise. I've had to make statements like this too many times. Communities like this have had to endure tragedies like this too many times.
Dylan Roof was identified by his uncle, who saw the images of him released by police after the mass killing. When officers arrived at Roof's family home, they learned that the shooter was given a gun by his father as a present for his 21st birthday in April this year. After fleeing the crime scene, Roof sent officers on a major manhunt across the state.
We've arrested Dylan Roof, R-O-O-F, from Lexington, South Carolina. Approximately 30 minutes ago, he was arrested in Shelby, North Carolina, during a traffic stop. At this time, we have not only FBI agents there, but we also have SLED and City of Charleston detectives preparing to fly to Shelby, North Carolina to begin the interview process as well as evidence recovery.
At the U.S. Department of Justice, following the tragedy, leaders tried to explain how no one foresaw what was coming.
I want to take a moment to address the heartbreaking and deeply tragic events that occurred at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina last evening. This is a crime that has reached into the heart of that community. The Department of Justice has opened a hate crime investigation into this shooting incident.
Roof was charged on 2 separate occasions earlier this year with drug offenses and trespassing. The Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church has a long history in Charleston, where it was established as a shelter in the face of racial hostility. In 1962, it was nearly burned down to the ground in another hate crime, but was erected once again. Now, after the fatal shooting in its basement, being called a hate crime by police, members of the oldest church of its kind in the American South say it will continue to persevere and emerge stronger still.
Yes, and with me right now is Yossi Edri, who recently published an article entitled Black Demon on the Michael Browns of American Society and a publicist for the site haokits.org. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening.
So, you know, we're hearing the American government or the American administration saying that it was a surprise. No one saw it coming. Come on, you entitled this article saying Black Demon on Michael Browns of American Society. They didn't see all these American Michael Browns in their society?
Well, Lucy, it's just, in this case, it's kind of the regular American hypocrisy after big public shootings, because in America, everyone can buy guns easily, especially in the South, and it's something that comes with the culture of Southern lifestyle. And you have a guy like the shooter, and everyone knew that he has a criminal background, and everyone's acting all surprised now that he went and shot 9 people. But it's something that happens regularly, and the police and the government are ignoring it because they don't want to put tough restrictions on gun control.
But not only, you know, it's not only gun control, but we are talking about, again, white against black. Again, this division, this racism inside the American society that although we are dealing in the last 8 years, almost 8 years, with an American black or Afro-American, I will say, president, it's not vanishing from the American society. And to ignore it, it seems like you said, a little bit of hypocrisy, or
because it's
being naive.
Exactly, because it's easy to look at Americans like Barack Obama or Jay-Z or LeBron James, like really successful black people, as a symbol of the American lifestyle, the American dream. But if you look at the evidence, if you look at the facts, if you look at the numbers, you see that most black Americans are living in impoverished communities. They're lacking in education. They're living in really poor neighborhoods, and incarceration of black people is in huge numbers. So it's just another way to ignore the problem, because it's easy to say, hey, you know, it's just one case. It's this crazy white guy, but you know, it's something that it's systematic. Racism in America is a systematic approach. And
more than that, it's not only a systematic approach, because if we just saw like police violence, it's not police violence. It's a cultural thing. It's a matter of education. It's a matter of racism. And this is what the Americans are not actually handling in a good way.
It's called the fear of the black man. So it's something that started way back in the 19th century, but it still goes on to this day. And you see many of the approach of the American system, and especially in the police force, you see that it's something that they consider black men as a threat. So you have racial profiling, and you have easy hand on the trigger when you see a black person instead of a white person. So it's something that it's culturally moving on with the generations, but again, we have a black president, but it's not going to stop if they're not going to take care of the culture of these organizations and so on.
Yes, first of all, thank you very, very much for this. And right now with us from South Carolina is Marcy Gonzalez. Good evening, Marcy. So what do we know about Dylan Roof?
Good evening, Lucy. We've learned that he is 21-year-old Dylan Roth, and police say they were able to track him down because of a tip. So they found him about 2 hours northwest of the church in his car. They were able to pull him over, and they say he cooperated with police, so he's now in custody being questioned. But this is the man police say they captured on surveillance video last night. This is the same man who went into this church last night, sat down during Bible study for about an hour before getting up and shooting and killing 9 people. Police say that he told one of the survivors, one of the 3 survivors, that he was letting her live so that she could tell people what he did. We're still waiting for an update on what charges this 21-year-old man could now be facing.
Yeah, so Marcy, you've been there all day. What's the atmosphere like now in Charleston?
What it's like near the church? There is just absolute devastation. People are in disbelief, as you might imagine. This is the road that leads up to the church, and you could probably see it's blocked off here. On the other side of those cameras, there are flowers that people have been bringing here all morning long. For hours, they've been coming by with their families, with young children, holding hands and praying. You just really get a sense of how hard this tragedy is hitting this community. Lucy.
Marcy Gonzalez, thank you very, very much from ABC News. Thank you very much, and thank you very much also for being with us. And now to another church in a different context. Police in Israel continue to investigate suspected arson at a Catholic church on the Sea of Galilee. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denounced what he described as a heinous attack, as 16 News from settlements were questioned. Shai Ben-Ari has the latest.
An arson attack that could have turned deadly occurred overnight at one of the holiest sites in Christianity. The Church of the Multiplication of the Loaves and the Fishes was set afire, with 2 of the 12 present at the time suffering from smoke inhalation. a 19-year-old female tourist, and a 79-year-old man.
Early in this morning, I think 3:15, I heard it a big, loudly tone, and I ran out from my room, and I saw the main entrance from the monastery was burned, and I smelled it is benzene.
Serious damage was caused at the site by the fire, with hundreds of books set ablaze along with pieces of furniture. Firefighters who rushed to the scene worked for 3 hours to put out the blaze, which nearly reached the chapel itself. The Church of the Multiplication is located on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel, and is, according to Christian tradition, the site where Jesus miraculously fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The arsonist desecrated one of the church walls by writing a phrase from a Hebrew prayer calling on false idols to be rooted out, suggesting this was another case of Jewish zealots targeting Christian holy sites with vandalism.
It is very sad also that we are talking now practically about a phenomenon, because we are talking about tens of incidents of attacks on holy places, not only of Christians, that took place in recent years.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu directed the head of the Shin Bet Internal Security Service to conduct a rapid investigation into the matter, calling the incident an attack on Israeli society as a whole. 16 Jewish youths were detained during early morning prayers near the northern city of Tiberias and underwent interrogation before being released in the afternoon. An attorney representing the group wrote a letter to police insinuating his clients were wrongly detained because of their religious background. It remains unclear at this stage who is responsible for the damage.
And right now with me is correspondent Shai Ben-Ari here in the studio. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening.
Another price tag attack. It's
Right.
not something that we're not used to. And like what Abu Nassar said in your report, this is a phenomenon.
It is a phenomenon. Unfortunately, what sets this recent attack apart a bit is that there were actually people present in the site. That's usually not the case. Usually when we talk about these price tag attacks, they actually target an empty mosque, for example, or an empty church. This time there were 12 people present. Unfortunately, it ended with relatively little damage in terms of people. We're talking about 2 people suffering from smoke inhalation. But also this is one of the most famous Christian sites to be targeted by these people. And indeed quite a lot of material damage was done, as you could see. Representatives of the Catholic Church say they're getting all sorts of calls from people, from potential pilgrims who want to come to Israel for the obvious reasons, but are now fearful. This is doing quite a lot of damage on a number of levels, so it's a cause for worry.
It's amazing because I think that this is, of course, price tag attacks. We are seeing it usually against Arabs and whomever is differentiating between Muslims and Christians had a perfect, let's say, answer that there is no, let's say, difference between Muslims and Christian Arabs inside Israel. So this can really affect everyone, and it seems that even Benjamin Netanyahu is realizing that this is not something to joke about anymore.
This is something that obviously the Israeli government takes very seriously. The relationship with world Christianity, the Catholic denominations, the various Protestant churches are really a strategic interest for Israel. This has all sorts of economic and diplomatic repercussions, and the Israeli government is very worried that Israel would become suddenly a site where it is a cause of fear for Christian pilgrims to come and visit these sites, which dot the country, really. This is a very important source of income for Israel, obviously, on a touristic level, but also there are the obvious moral and simply standards of human decency, which are perhaps at the forefront of this issue.
Yes, just stay with me right now here. Shai, let's join to this conversation on the phone. With us from New York is Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, President of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Rabbi Eckstein, let's try to understand how such an incident, or not incident, such a phenomenon that's starting to be something out on a regular basis in Israel can affect the relationship between Jews and Christians abroad.
Well, and my first thinking is that this is a moral stain on our society. I'm reminded of Kristallnacht in 1938, where the Nazis destroyed and burnt synagogues and books, Jewish books, and that intolerance that was exhibited there. And someone once said it begins with synagogue burning, but it ended with human lives being murdered. I think this is not just a moral stain, it's stain, but it's a warning sign for us in Israel. It's not just a question of whether this will affect tourism. I think we're all aware that this is a very isolated incident by, and they have to catch them, by a few people who were assuming are religious, define themselves as religious Jews. There's nothing for Christian pilgrims to fear. Israel is a society governed by law.
Yeah, but Rabbi, you know, I want to touch us exactly on this point where you said, I don't think it's a matter of tourism. It's not a matter of tourism. It's a matter of education in the Israeli society. Of course, we're talking about allegedly 16-year-old people who are coming from the settlements that maybe or maybe not committed this crime. But what is happening about in the Israeli society? What is happening to the Israeli Jewish society in Israel, in the Jewish land, Jewish people are allowing themselves to do these kind of acts?
Again, I think the acts are being done by isolated individuals. What the calling and the warning is to us as a society as a whole, what that means that especially the religious community must not only condemn those actions, which most of the rabbis tend to do, it must go deeper to understand the roots of that.
Hello? Rabbi
Walking and spit on the ground in front of them, that's not just a question of one or two people legally doing that or illegally doing it. It's a question of the context. The rabbis must come out and say, we need to build tolerance. We need to extend love. And if I can tell you, what our organization, which is the largest philanthropy in Israel, is doing, we are giving thousands of families on Ramadan food. We give on Christmas to Christians. We give the Druze millions of dollars that we give to help the poor in Israel, Jew or non-Jew alike.
I want to give you, just for example, to maybe hear your opinion about, we saw the last election campaign that was held in Israel. We saw how violent it was, and we saw the comments of the Prime Minister of Israel saying what he said about the Israeli Arabs going to vote. I'm asking you how it was perceived in the United States when you are actually trying to educate Jews, when you're trying to educate people outside of the United States about tolerance, about how Israel can be a tolerant country. And you're seeing what you're seeing in the elections. This is, let's say, this is the result. What we're seeing is the result of our leaders saying and doing what they're doing in an election campaign and thinking that it's okay.
Look, I don't think you're right in accusing the society as a whole for an intolerance that is reflected in incidents by a few.
No, I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying. I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying that when the leaders are allowing themselves to act in a certain way, so the people will act the same way.
The Prime Minister's statements were wrong. They were immoral. He apologized for them. It's much deeper than a soundbite by the Prime Minister at the time of the election. It's deeper in the religious community. It's part of the culture of some segments to be intolerant towards Christians, to be intolerant towards Muslims. And while Israel is ruled by law and can deal with this, it's much more, Yigal Amir, who killed the Prime Minister as a religious obligation that he felt, didn't pop up without any context.
Of course.
He popped out and killed the Prime Minister because of the culture in the religious community in which he lived that seem to condone that.
Yes, Rabbi.
So we need, as a society, to obviously condemn it. We, as our organization, we are helping the church rebuild.
Definitely.
We are contributing funds to them.
Thank you very, very much for your fine and intelligent and warm words, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
One last comment, Shai.
Yes, well, I think when you talk about the various incidents here, we're talking about a string that goes back a number of years. If you just remember, there was an issue near the old city of Jerusalem around Mount Zion where basically Christian pilgrims and also priests are harassed on their way to church by various yeshiva boys who study in that area. There was an incident at the Monastery of the Cross. There was an incident at the monastery in Latrun, where the silent monks are present. Also in an ancient Byzantine church down in the Negev in Uvdat. This has become a phenomenon, and the question is what the Israeli authorities can do. So far, not so much.
Yes, Shai Ben-Ari, thank you very much for this.
No problem.
60 million people. That's the incredible record number the UN says were forced to flee their homes in 2014. It's also the highest ever increase in a single year. Correspondent Ali Ochenberg has the details.
From Syria to Ukraine, through Myanmar to Burundi, these ongoing violent conflicts, with no solution in sight, have raised the number of worldwide refugees to an all-time record of almost 60 million people, half of them children.
The world has lost much of its capacity to prevent conflicts and to timely solve them, and the result is the dramatic situation we are presenting today. And dramatic not only because there are more and more refugees and displaced persons, but because there are less and less solutions for them.
According to an alarming report by the UN Refugee Agency, published Thursday, and dealing with 2014, a shocking average of 42,500 people became refugees, asylum seekers, or are internally displaced every day, representing a fourfold increase in just 4 years. The bloody civil war in Syria received a dishonorable first place, with 7.6 million displaced people and almost 4 million refugees, who mainly fled to neighboring Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey. It was the first time the number of Syrian refugees has overtaken the number of Afghan refugees. Yet Syria and Afghanistan are far from the only conflicts which forced people to flee. At least 14 conflicts have erupted or resumed throughout the world in the last 5 years: Ukraine, South Sudan, Nigeria, Central African Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they are the conflicts which are increasing the figures. The numbers also show that the Ukraine conflict pushed the number of refugees in Russia to 231,800 people by the year's end, up from 3,400 only 12 months earlier. But what is maybe even more disturbing is the fact that while many conflicts have erupted or reignited in the past 5 years, only a few have been conclusively resolved. Only 126,800 refugees were able to return home in 2014. This is the lowest number in 31 years.
Unfortunately, the number of situations in which a solution is found is close to zero.
This Saturday, June 20th, is the UNHCR's World Refugee Day. Hopefully, by this time next year, the numbers will be different in the positive sense of the word.
And with me right now from Geneva is Adrian Edwards, UNHCR spokesman. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
You know, 60 million people, Adrian. This is, I cannot even start experiencing what I'm thinking right now, because the world is becoming more violent. And are we becoming more silent on this?
Well, very clearly, displacement worldwide is really going off the charts. 10 years ago, we had 37 or so million people forcibly displaced. Over the last year, we've seen a further 16% increase in new displacement, new refugees, new internally displaced people. The numbers are going haywire. More than half of this is children. And behind this, of course, and as you just heard, it lurks this huge international problem that conflicts are growing while older conflicts are not being resolved. So at two levels, both in the increasing conflict and the increasing consequences, this mass displacement we're now seeing, there's great cause for concern.
You know, it's not only a great place for concern, it seems that it's only going to deteriorate even further, because with what we're seeing that is happening in the Middle East, with what we're seeing that is happening in Africa, with what we're seeing that is happening all around the world, it seems that we're only talking. We're only talking about the problems, we're only putting reports out, we're only putting the problems out there, reporting on them, but we're not actually doing anything about it. And maybe some people are gaining from this situation. How come we became such a society?
Well, it's absolutely true. The conflict is growing fast and solutions are very inadequate at the moment. 15 new conflicts over the past 5 years, a very rapid acceleration in numbers. And unfortunately, at the moment, there is no reason for optimism that we're going to see a change in the trend direction. There really fundamentally has to be a look at two things. One, of course, is at the political level. Very much greater international priority has to be put on ending conflicts and preventing them. And on the other side, very much increased attention has to be looked at dealing with the consequences. Currently, existing funding only really goes towards about half of the world's forcibly displaced. This is nowhere near enough. So the levels of international response
Adrian,
to this situation are clearly not adequate.
Adrian, I'm trying to think about right now, let's take a specific case, about the case that with the Syrian refugees in Turkey. For example, we're starting to see that this specific issue is becoming a big problem for Turks. It's becoming a big problem for Turkey. It cannot handle this amount of refugees that it has, and also Jordan and Lebanon. And it means that the minute that it can create another conflict for next year or maybe in 2 years. Is there any certain resolution or certain solution that can be found for these places, or to start preventing things from happening in the next future when we're already seeing the problems that will happen?
Well, there are multiple problems that have to be looked at. One is the impact on host communities. Turkey right now is the world's biggest refugee hosting country. But countries like Lebanon too, they're hosting more refugees per head of population than any other country. The pressures on these countries in this situation are absolutely immense, and they need help for that. Without that, we'll see rising xenophobia, we'll see doors being closed to refugees, we'll see all the wrong reactions for an era of mass conflict, mass displacement globally. So that really has to be looked at. But fundamentally, we've got to find ways to get countries working together and pushing this problem up the international scale of priorities.
Yes, Adrian Edwards, thank you very, very much for this talk with us. And we are going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. We have an exclusive interview for you with Jay Leno. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes, and I'll be back. South Carolina church shooting. After a protracted manhunt, 21-year-old Dylan Roth is arrested and taken into custody, suspected in the attack that left 9 people dead in a historic African-American church in Charleston. Eurozone finance ministers convene in Luxembourg for crunch time talks to reach a deal to prevent Greece's bankruptcy and departure from the Eurozone, as the IMF warns Athens will be given no extension. And another so-called price tag attack in Israel. A 5th century Catholic church on the shores of the Sea of Galilee is torched. The police question 16 youths from a West Bank settlement. Welcome back to the news today. The European crisis of Greece's massive debt is reaching a peak. Eurozone foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels today, seeking a deal, but the pressure is on. International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde warned Athens today it would get no extension. Gabi Tartakovsky explains.
EU finance ministers met Thursday in Luxembourg for another round of talks aimed at keeping Greece in the European Union while ensuring it will abide by crucial reforms in order to clear its debt. Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis criticized the growing discontent from the country's creditors.
Some time ago, Mario Draghi, the president of the European Central Bank, said quite correctly that for the euro to succeed anywhere, it must succeed everywhere. We think he's absolutely spot on. And today we are going to be presenting the Greek government's ideas along those lines. The purpose is to replace costly discord.
A harsher tone has been sounded off by the International Monetary Fund, which eagerly awaits Greek repayment of a 1.6 billion euro loan.
Timeline, 30th of June is the day when the lump sum payment is due to the IMF, and there is no grace period or 2 months delay, as I have seen here and there. On July the 1st, payments not been made.
Greece insists it will refuse any public sector cuts and in pension funds, claiming 2/3 of the country's retired people already live below or near the poverty line. With no deal reached, Greece will default on both the IMF and the European Central Bank loans before a potentially risky exit of the Eurozone. If aid funds for Greece will then be halted, complete bankruptcy is inevitable, but that would haunt the EU for years to come.
And right now with me here to understand if it is the end for Greece in the Eurozone is economy reporter for the Jerusalem Post, Niamh Ellis. Good evening.
Good evening.
Is it the end for them?
You know, I read an interesting line from The Economist that said, Grexit isn't an event, it's a process. And I think that they're exactly spot on. What we have been seeing for months is red line after red line, deadline after deadline, and always at the last minute something happens that thankfully up until now has had a happy ending. But the point is that nobody wants Greece to exit the euro. That is bad for everybody. It might happen because every side is being too intransigent and every side has an incentive to push to the very last minute to get the best deal that they can, but they're not trying to, which means that despite what Christine Lagarde said today, if there's a giant breakthrough on June 30th that requires some extension from the IMF loan, I'm sure she would rather give them a grace period.
So try to explain to me what they are trying to find some happy ending in Russia right now when Prime Minister Tsipras is going to meet Vladimir Putin?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that also should be taken into consideration because we're thinking right now, oh, the euro, oh, you know, the currency and the EU and what's going to happen to global markets. But there's also a very big political problem here, right? I mean, the whole idea was that after World War II, Europe stayed together because it became an economic zone of trade, right? That there was an economic peace that made the political peace more palatable through the years, and the euro was really supposed to be part of that. If, say, the worst case scenario happens and Greece leaves the euro and maybe even leaves the EU, of course it's going to need political allies, and who's it going to turn to? It's going to turn to Russia, it's going to turn to China, it's going to turn to people that maybe have different points of view on what they want to happen to the EU and Europe.
But how it's working out for Russia with all the sanctions and to add Greece into that?
Absolutely. I mean, Russia's not in a great economic state right now. It has a lot of sanctions. The ruble is tanked, but it still has power that it can project. The fact that it's doing worse than it should be doesn't mean that it's not powerful at all. And it sees here a golden opportunity. Now, I don't know if Greece is really serious about turning to Russia for either, you know, support or if this is just, you know, another bargaining chip to say, hey, you guys are meeting in the EU in Luxembourg to talk about what's going to happen to Greece. Why don't I go meet with Putin and remind you that you have a lot at stake here as well? But it's certainly a threat that's worth making for Greece.
Thank you very much, Niamh Ellis. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I think that I'm going to see you again about
I have a harsh feeling that even though it's great to see you, that there's going to be more tough news to talk about.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Danes are voting today in an extremely close election wherein an opposition center-reach alliance is working to oust Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt. Thorning-Schmidt has trailed her opposition after a string of unpopular reforms and accusations of broken promises since taking power in 2011. Her competition, led by former Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen, promises tax breaks and tougher immigration controls. Exit polls should start coming in just about 20 minutes' time. A defeat for China in Hong Kong. Lawmakers in the city today vetoed reforms suggested by Beijing to oversee the candidates for the chief executive of Hong Kong. Pro-democracy activists say the reform is a shame, but after months of protests in the city last year, has the popular movement for democracy in Hong Kong finally reached the government? Ayman Siksik maybe has the answer for you.
Today, 28 electoral members voted against the wishes of the majority of the Hong Kong people and denying them the democratic right to elect the chief executive in the next election.
Disappointment and anger. This is how the news of the political reform veto in Hong Kong was addressed by its chief executive, Leung Chun-ying. The electoral reform package, vetted by China, was struck down by the Hong Kong legislature on concerns that it was, quote, undemocratic. The reason? Beijing is looking to pre-approve the candidates for the chief executive position, thus exercising more control of Hong Kong. But a defeat for the Hong Kong government was imminent early on Thursday. Out of the 70-member legislature, only 36 were present. An overwhelming majority of 28 voted to veto the reform, sparking anger among pro-establishment figures.
We deeply regret the outcome of the vote on the government motion, and we wish to express our anger at the opposition.
But for pro-democracy lawmakers, the vote was a clear win against a reform they consider to be a sham.
That Hong Kong people would not want to take on this fake democratic package.
The veto comes after months of protests in Hong Kong last year, held in opposition to the government's proposal for limited elections for the chief executive, which pro-democracy activists call a fake democracy.
And for some not really good news, data released by NASA shows that the first 5 months of 2015 were the warmest globally since records began in 1880s. That trend follows what was also the warmest winter since at least the 1880s. Climate change skeptics have claimed there was a halt in warming based on the period between 1997 and 2011, but that has been discounted by a paper this month from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They say the rate of warming in the last 21st century is at least as great as the latter half of the 20th century. And with us to understand if we should be worried or not is Professor Yoav Yair, Dean School of Sustainability, Interdisciplinary Center at the IDC Herzliya. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening, Lucy.
So should we be worried?
Definitely.
I'm starting to mumble because
yeah, it's getting hotter and it's going to be hotter yet.
Today we felt it here in Israel. It's going to get even hotter than what we felt today.
Certainly.
Okay.
But we're not judging based on weather.
Of course.
We are looking at climate. Climate is long-term range of predictions. I'm not predicting the weather tomorrow or on Saturday or on Sunday, but I'm looking 20, 30, 40 years into the future and trying to give an average of the conditions that are going to prevail here in Israel, but elsewhere in the world. And we look at the global trends, and I think everybody who sees the graphs can clearly see the trend where it's going, and it's going to get hotter.
And so if it's going to get hotter, like you're saying, what does it mean about us? What does it mean that, because we just spoke a little bit and you told me we're going to get used to it. How are we going to get used to it?
I have to define what I'm saying.
Okay.
So in terms of the human body, can we acclimatize ourselves to this new temperature regime which will be prevailing in 10 or 20 years? Surely, because it's going to be gradual, we'll get accustomed. We will have to, of course, modify the way we go outside, spend less time in the sun, drink a lot of water, air condition every available space that we can. But this, in turn, requires large amounts of energy. And in this regard, and I'm sure you've heard about...
Icebergs and...
Of course. So energy has to come from something that does not accelerate the warming, which means renewable energies, such as wind, solar, and other resources, but not burning fossil fuels like we used to, and we keep on doing, which eventually release CO2 into the atmosphere, increase greenhouse warming, and the immediate result is that the world gets warmer.
You know, how it's going to affect, we're always thinking about us, but how it's going to affect animals?
Oh, well, animals will migrate, and some will get extinct. I mean, if you don't adapt, as you know, Darwin had already shown us hundreds of years ago, if you don't adapt, you go extinct. So there will be changes. You have bioinvasion. Look at what's happening in the Mediterranean Sea. As the water gets warmer, you get tons and tons and swarms of jellyfish migrating to the eastern part of the Mediterranean. You get tropical fish migrating through the Suez Canal into the sea because it's getting warmer. So they are happy tropical fish are happy
You know,
in the Mediterranean.
The image that I have in my head is actually very funny and nice. It's the Ice Age film, but it's not going to be funny and nice in the future like the Ice Age film.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Professor Yoav Yair, thank you very much for this.
My pleasure.
In a first, Pope Francis issued a papal document dedicated to the environment, putting the Catholic Church square in political controversy over climate change. Backing scientists claims that global warming is mostly man-made. Eastern Orthodox Metropolitan John Zizisolas presented the statement as the Vatican.
This encyclical comes at a critical moment in human history, and will undoubtedly have a worldwide effect on people's consciousness. Those who read the encyclical will be impressed by the depth and the thoroughness with which the ecological problem is treated, and its seriousness is brought out, together with concrete suggestions and proposals on how to act in order to face its consequences.
It's good to have some confirmation also from religion joining this. And for a look back at this day in history is Danny Swibel. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you today?
Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
And you're bringing us today a look at Egypt.
Yes. So we saw some really rocky history stuff today looking in Egypt. So
yes.
Morsi's sentence was confirmed. You know, he will be put to death. Not a good week for the Muslim Brotherhood in general.
Definitely not.
So looking back, I chose on June 18th, 1953, the Revolutionary Council Command declared Egypt a republic, abolishing the monarchy. Now, this is a very important point in the history because this is when Nasser came to power. President Nasser, he was actually the architect of this movement. And once he came to power, some of the more religious elements in the society, they opposed the Constitution, and they felt that Nasser's government was too secular. So they organized these mass protests, which is what we started seeing at that time, the outlawing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
You know, I'm trying to understand to where Egypt is going back now, to which time exactly it's going back now, and maybe Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is taking some of Nasser's, let's say, way of leading the country, leading Egypt.
It certainly does seem like that, but the thing is, when you push a force down like the Muslim Brotherhood over the course of decades upon decades, well, they eventually rise back up. And we saw after 2011, when they were finally, you know, accepted as a party, that, you know, Morsi ended up getting elected to office. So will Sisi perhaps learn anything from his predecessor? Will he continue to crush down these forces, or will he perhaps give them a voice and listen to perhaps, not that I'm an apologist or any sort of sympathizer of some of the negative things that the Brotherhood has done.
Actually trying to be a democracy.
Exactly. This is what the question is, because the way we look at this government and Nasser's government, we see too many similarities.
Too many and maybe not so good.
Yeah.
Danny Swabel, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And, okay, dignitaries gathered in Waterloo in Belgium today to mark 200 years since the Battle of Waterloo put an end to Napoleon's ambitions of European domination, sending him into exile. They were joined at the site 20 kilometers south of Belgian capital Brussels by descendants of the combatants. More than 40,000 men may have been killed or wounded in a battle that brought about a century of fragile peace. And now we're back here to our region. Tensions between Jews and Arabs have unfortunately seeped into almost every aspect of Israeli society, including sports. Racist chants and nationalistic provocations are a common, let's say, enough sight in Israeli football stadium. But one initiative by the Hapoel Katamon Football Club in Jerusalem is using the game to bring together children who would otherwise rarely get a chance to interact. Shaiban Ari reports.
The past 12 months have been difficult for the citizens of Jerusalem. The city, which Israel calls its eternal united capital, remains in many ways divided by politics, culture, history, and geography, not to mention violence, with numerous incidents over the course of the last year. Genuine efforts to bridge the gap are few and far between, but one of them took place this week. The final tournament of the season of the Jerusalem Neighborhood Football League was held Tuesday. bringing together children from the city's wide range of ethnic backgrounds.
This league includes Jewish teams, Arab teams, religious teams, secular teams. We have players whose parents are asylum seekers, players whose parents are immigrants from Ethiopia, Russia. We have kids from all sorts of backgrounds, so we really reflect an accurate image of the city of Jerusalem.
Organized by the Hapoel Katamon Football Club, the league represents a rare opportunity for Arab and Jewish children to interact in a peaceful environment. Happening behind me here now is one of many games that have taken place this evening between teams representing neighborhoods in East and West Jerusalem. In the red jerseys here is a team representing the Abu Tur neighborhood in East Jerusalem, and in the orange jerseys is a team representing the bilingual school in West Jerusalem. Another game was held between a team representing the Arab neighborhood of Abu Tur in East Jerusalem and Givat Gonen, a team from the Katamonim neighborhood in West Jerusalem.
In my opinion, this is a very good and serious project. And I just hope we don't concede a goal now. But we did. That's it.
Yes, we just scored to make it 1-1, and that's good. Givat Gonen is a strong team with good players. As they say, football is the language of the whole world. Even if you don't speak Hebrew, Arabic, English, or French, everyone speaks football.
The match ended peacefully at 1-1, but in the past, games between these two teams have been tense. What would have happened if the other team won?
No big deal. As long as you have fun, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but last time something bad happened. We won and we avoided shaking hands after the match, and it created this Arabs versus Israelis thing.
Later, we offered to play another match against them, and we wrote them an apology.
And we gave them our trophy, and yes, we shook hands.
We learned our lesson.
Football is a game. You either win or lose. It is a joy to play, and when we play, we score goals against each other, but we remain friends and play together.
I won't tell you that at the beginning of the season, following last summer's events, there wasn't any tension around. There was. There were teams that were afraid to show up, all sorts of things. But somehow we worked it out and overcame the difficulties.
It seems more difficulties could be overcome with a few more initiatives, like this one.
And for our special day, special corner with Thursday with Honey and Ellie.
Ellie and Honey.
Ellie and Honey. Professor of Political Science, Dr. Hani Zubaydah, and diplomatic correspondent for the News Today, Ellie Ochenberg, to sum up what happened this week in the Israeli politics.
Ellie even typed everything up.
Ellie, you typed everything?
So nice.
I'm an organized girl. Drop it, okay? Drop it. But today, we will not discuss politics.
I'm with you. You should.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to do my job here, honey. Stop it.
It's like the people with the Golan, the people with Ellie. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we're not.
Let you right now open the conversation.
Today, we're not talking politics, but gossip and love triangles.
Oh.
Yes.
About who?
Okay, so we will start with the most interesting, juicy one, which is, of course, Lieberman, Netanyahu, and Bougie Herzog. Really, the Isaac, yeah. Right, Isaac. Well, so Netanyahu has been trying to be very flirtatious with Herzog. Yeah, for the last couple of months since his government was established. Every once in a while, he's like throwing him another hint that he should join his government. Come, and Herzog is not making any move toward Netanyahu. And Lieberman, which he's like the old furious ex-girlfriend.
Let's remind our viewers this fact.
And Netanyahu and Lieberman has a long history of a relationship, disagreements, yes, to say the least. And he's been acknowledging the current situation that Netanyahu wants to expand his government, and he's trying to give his own share, saying that.
Yeah, but he's asking for some things. First of all, he's asking for 1,000 apartments. And then, he's asking for 1,000 apartments in Ma'ale Adumim, which is, East Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And he's also asking for the anti-NGO parties BDS law, which means every party, every NGO that will support the BDS will be outlawed. Good for you, Lieberman. And third, and that's a given, he will be asking for the foreign ministry.
Oh.
Yes, he will be asking for the foreign ministry.
This is like a huge surprise. You know?
Yeah, but he knows there's been a problem with the working environment there. It became more hostile since this government, because you cannot really leave the country as a foreign minister. You have to stay here all the time due to the balance between the coalition and opposition. However, this is what's going on.
They need more people in the government. This is the bottom line.
You started saying that this is a flirtatious relationship, and Benjamin Netanyahu, it seems that he is more flirting with Isaac Herzog than he is flirting with Lieberman, because Isaac Herzog, and correct me if I'm wrong, both of you, he will be better perceived outside with the international community, especially with everything that is happening right now.
Yeah, the problem is that also Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want Lieberman. Lieberman has, well, he stuck too many knives in his back during the last 6 years. Especially during the last war in Gaza, he doesn't trust him anymore. Well, this flirtatious was weird. Lieberman was kind of like trying to hug Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was pushing him off while trying to hug Herzog. With Herzog, he also has a problem. He doesn't want Tzipi Livni, second in command in the coalition.
What are the chances that Tzipi Livni will stay in the Zionist camp?
0. If they go into coalition?
If you're talking relationships, so she's not a very good one in long-term relationships.
Have you seen
she
her?
likes
she won't fit in this, let's say, relationship or marriage.
Not at all. Not for the long term.
Have you seen her with Isaac Herzog?
Exactly my next question.
Okay,
Where is she?
Hiding.
Well, no, she's interviewing for British TV, being asked if her parents were terrorists. Yes, she was. That was a day ago. And she's been doing a lot of media events, and she's far away.
So what?
She's detached from what's going on in the Zionist camp. She's not like completely related to the Zionist camp as she was a few months ago.
She's preparing herself
her next
for
stage,
and let's say to open another party, or she's preparing her retirement.
To collaborate with another party, to establish a new party. There are many opportunities. I don't think she's willing to leave the political life behind her at the moment.
I don't see anyone who would like to work with her. Not in
not
in the current configuration of the Knesset. She might sit outside with 6 parliament members and try to do a great job from the opposition. If nothing major happens, Tzipi Livni will be deleted from the Israeli political system in the upcoming election, in my opinion, I should say.
She's conceived as a very untrustworthy woman.
I'm not so sure why, but due to the jumping and the inconsistency.
What else? What else? So Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to Washington and currently a new politician. And here too is a very gossipy story. Let's start by saying that Michael Oren has a new book. Okay, he wants to promote his new book.
He can.
But as a former diplomat and a newly politician, there are only certain things he can do to draw attention. One of them is to write in the Wall Street Journal a very, very harsh op-ed about the relationship between Israel and the U.S., blaming Washington for basically...
No, blaming Obama.
Specifically Barack Obama. But why should he blame Barack Obama? Because knowing Michael Oren, it's like he's more of a Democrat than a diplomat than a Republican one. I'm really cautious with the things that I'm saying. But why? Why is this?
Allegedly, because he cannot get on a plane and travel to the United States and have a book tour. That's the reason. The only way he can draw attention to a book, a major book deal that was signed, is by doing this. He did not expect the ripple effect. He did not see the tsunami coming on him.
Michael Oren didn't see the tsunami coming?
No, I do not think he saw it.
Do you really think that he didn't see, like Michael Oren, really intelligent man, really good diplomat, he was sitting in the UN, he was talking with the United States for a long time and with the United States administration. Really, Michael Oren didn't see it coming?
He was a great diplomat, and he's on his way to become a politician. The time between the 2 points, the transition, has made him a lousy diplomat and now apparently a lousy politician. He was hammered from all over. The American asked Benjamin Netanyahu.
But this working very good for Benjamin Netanyahu and his approach towards the U.S. administration in the last year.
He was personally asked by Obama's administration to apologize and force Michael Oren himself to take back his things, but Netanyahu is, of course, not giving back.
He just asked Kahlon to call him and reprimand him, but the book is selling.
Okay, but I prepared for you something. Just before we are going out for a break and finishing this for an update, of course, from our news desk, we just want to remind you that a legendary comedian, Jay Leno, landed in Israel for the second time tonight. He is hosting the Genesis Prize Awards ceremony that is taking place in Jerusalem. And especially for you, Hani and Ellie, I asked him what he thinks about Israeli politics. Let's see.
It seems like every Israeli voter here has his own political party. I mean,
yes,
you guys have more parties than that Berlusconi guy, the Italian prime minister. I mean, I just like hundreds of.
It's much more interesting than to have only Republicans and Democrats.
I like you have 1/10 of 1% of the vote, and you have the most votes because there are so many parties.
Never ever put it better.
That's just like. You know, this is how Jay Leno thinks.
The punchline, he gave you the punchline.
Berlusconi.
Berlusconi.
Really, Berlusconi.
You know why he knows Berlusconi?
It's just like.
It's because he's in love with cars and Italians and Berlusconi and Ferrari.
We're going out for a small break, an update from our news desk, and then we will have a special full interview with Jay Leno here in Israel for I-24 News. Don't go anywhere. An update, and we will be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Welcome back. Legendary comedian Jay Leno landed in the Holy Land for the second time to host the Genesis Prize Awards ceremony this year. The prize will be awarded to actor Michael Douglas. I-24 News had the great honor to sit down for a really interesting talk, and what a talk it was, with the one and only Jay Leno. Jay Leno, thank you very much for giving us this interview.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is great fun.
So I have to start with an apology.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because the day that it was your last show, we broadcast this, and we broadcast you being really emotional. Mm-hmm. And of course, it was emotional for all of us, and we broadcast it in our channel. But the first thing that I did after broadcasting this is saying that I'm willing to replace you in your.
Well, that's very fine. Welcome to show business. I see you have the true show business heart. That's how we're very sorry. And thank you. If that job is available, I see that's why you will be.
If this job is available, so I'm willing to take.
There you go.
So first of all, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But how are you?
I'm very good, actually. It's fun to be back.
It's fun to be back. And how are you in general? You've been like out of the Jay Leno show.
Well, I'm doing a show. I do a show on the web, Jay Leno's Garage, which is a car show, and I'm doing another car show for CNBC, which is kind of a Top Gear kind of thing, which is great fun. That's what I like to do. So it's fun not having to talk to celebrities. God, it's fantastic.
Really, it's fantastic because.
Well, I mean, because you don't really talk to celebrities. First you talk to the press person, and don't ask him this, and don't ask him that. And when you talk to a celebrity, you're not really talking to Batman. You're talking to a guy playing Batman, so it's. I always enjoyed the politicians and those type of people because at least as real as a politician could be. I mean, it was who they're supposed to be. That was always fun.
So what brings you to Israel?
Well, I'm doing this Genesis Award. I mean, I find it fascinating that they couldn't find a Jewish comedian to do this.
For the second time, by the way.
Yeah, the second time. A Jewish sports star, that might be harder to find. But a Jewish comedian, it doesn't seem like it should be that difficult. But I'm sort of Israel's Shabbos Goy. They bring me in to do this, and that's
I used to be one.
Oh, there you are.
For a long time.
There you go. Well, we have that in common, you see.
Yes. If I should take you back on one specific interview with one celebrity that you remember the most, what would it be?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one. One that was really interesting to me was John F. Kennedy Jr. Because when I was a little kid, I was alive when Kennedy was assassinated. That shows you how old I am. And I remember watching the funeral on TV, and it was black and white. And I'm sitting with my mother, and as the coffin went by, remember there's a frame of little John waving, and my mother just crying hysterically. And when you're a kid, your mom's upset. You don't know what to do, So I always had that image in my mind. And then go forward 45, 50 years, I have Jerry Seinfeld's the first guest, and John F. Kennedy Jr. is the second guest. And Jerry and I talk, and I had talked to John F. Kennedy Jr. in the dressing room. Didn't hit me at all. But when I said, please welcome John F. Kennedy Jr., he came around the corner. As I shook his hand, in the corner of my eye, I saw myself shaking hands with him on the TV. And I got very emotional because I thought of my mom. And the idea that I would somehow be shaking hands with that little child on TV 50 years later, it just caught me off guard for a moment. I mean, I didn't become overly emotional on television. It just, you know, I wanted to tell my mom, look, it turned out okay, and obviously it didn't because sadly he died in a plane crash. But that was a fascinating one for me.
How did you receive the message that you got the job of being the host of the Jay Leno show?
You know, you usually hear it from, you'll be getting a sandwich and the waiter, hey, I heard you got the, what? What? Nobody tells you directly. You always hear through, it was on TV, somebody saw it on TMZ, you know, they never tell you directly. It's like when you get fired, what? I'm not going in tomorrow? What? You know, I got the job. What? You know, that's the way show business works. Nobody really tells you exactly.
Do you remember how you felt? Because, you know, to have a show that says the Jay Leno show.
Well, it wasn't a Jay Leno show. It was the Tonight Show. It was the Tonight Show.
The Tonight Show, but it's Jay Leno. I'm sure that your mom was really proud.
Originally, it was the Tonight Show starring Jay Leno. And my mother, being from Scotland, which is very, starring Jay Leno, Mr. Fancy, starring, got to put his name on everything, starring. So I just changed it to the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So he's getting a big head now. We think he's Mr. Who's Who, starring Jay Leno. And my mother just never stopped. She just thought that was, because, you know, the Scotch are very, don't volunteer, don't be quiet, don't stand out in a crowd. So the idea that it would be starring, my mother just thought that was just too much, you know. So we changed it to with Jay Leno.
I want to take you, like, in a more serious note about the last events that the United States is experiencing in the last few days and, you know, maybe in the last few months. Michael Brown was maybe the first outbreak of the relationship, or maybe the fragile relationship between black people and white people in the United States.
Well, I think what you have is something that's been going on for a long, long time. The thing is now, the nice thing about having a free media is the fact that you get all the news all the time. I mean, when I was a kid, you never would have read about child molestation. A woman was never raped. She was accosted on the street. So are there problems? Yes. Are things better? I think they are. I mean, I can't pretend to speak for someone else, but at least I know. You know, you have a situation now, what used to be the law is now against the law. So that part of it is good.
Because why I'm asking you, because, you know, when people are coming, for example, to Israel, so they don't know really how we're living here. They don't know how complicated the situation is between Israelis and Palestinians, that it's not black and white. Us watching this from the Middle East, what is happening in the United States, the land of opportunities, when people are being judged based on their color, how much do you think that Hollywood, how much do you think that the culture has an influence on people and in maintaining these stereotypes in the American culture?
It's sensationalism sells. It sells in every country. But you know something? Every human responds to kindness. There is not one race of people that don't respond well to kindness. They just do. I'm fortunate to live in Los Angeles, which has all types of people. My friend Karouche has a Jewish girlfriend. He's Iranian. Probably wouldn't happen in Iran.
Of course.
But,
even in Israel, by the way.
Israel. And the parents are like, well, on both sides, well, here it's an issue, in LA it's a sitcom, you know. So different strokes, different folks. I'm not sure what the question is. What was the question again?
The question is, how much influence do you think that Hollywood has on the stereotypes, on maintaining stereotypes in the American society?
Hollywood's very funny because when they show violence in Hollywood, it's just a movie. We can't believe anybody would actually believe blah, blah. But then when Hollywood does some uplifting, heartwarming movie, we feel this will raise the spirit and make people, it's a one-way street. You ever notice that? When it's a heartwarming, touching movie, suddenly everyone will be lifted and we'll all be friends. But when it's some horrible, violent thing, now people know that's not real. So it's hypocrisy at its finest.
You know, so if it's hypocrisy in its finest, and I'm not connecting this to that, but Donald Trump running to the presidency.
Hypocrisy at its finest. You can directly connect it. What is funnier than that?
You know, it's like I'm seeing him. He wants to make America great again. How do you see that? You
know, you get the government you deserve. If you don't pay attention and follow the facts, you get the government you deserve. Look, I know Donald. I think he's trying to take himself a little too seriously. I don't believe this run will go past a couple of weeks. There'll be some reason why. You know, it's hilarious.
Do you see yourself running for the presidency of the United States? Because a lot of actors.
Not until this moment, no. It haven't even occurred to me. That's very flattering, but thank you. No. So first, so you're thinking, well, if Trump can run,
no.
So you think,
no, oh my God.
I see. Oh, I see.
No.
I get it now. Well, I am storming out.
Okay, I finished this conversation.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to stop here. No, but because you said that you're really interested, it was really much more interesting for you to interview politicians than to interview actors.
Well, real politicians. I mean, Donald Trump is a wealthy guy. Isn't he wealthy? I think he's mentioned it.
I think that he has a couple of dollars.
Yeah. You see, to me, as an American, my fear is that's what the rest of the world think America is like. Hamburgers, giant cars that guzzle gas, and Donald Trump, you know. And of course, it's not. There's way more to it than that.
I will tell you why, because like I told you, a lot of people who are coming from the United States, a lot of people who are coming from all over the world, don't really understand the difficulties in Israel, don't understand the difficulties in the Middle East. We see the United States trying to intervene with what is happening in the Middle East, and sometimes not in a successful way.
Right.
But
I think all the time, not in a successful way. Sometimes.
I'm trying to be politically correct here. But you know, I'm trying to understand if you change your mind about how complicated the situation is, that it's not that black and white, that it's not only Palestinians and Israelis.
I know, but if you keep thinking the situation is so complicated, it'll never get solved. You do it one step at a time. I mean, that's basically what it is. I mean, this is the only democracy in the Middle East. And I actually think Israel is the purest democracy because it seems like every Israeli voter here has his own political party. I mean, you guys have more parties than that Berlusconi guy, the Italian prime minister. I mean, just like hundreds of.
It's much more interesting than to have only Republicans and Democrats.
I like you have 1/10 of 1% of the vote, and you have the most votes because there are so many parties. I mean, it's as a stranger, you know.
It's hilarious. You can say it.
It is hilarious because stranger in a strange land is always the most interesting thing to me. Who's the guy, Alex de Tocqueville, when he came to America, and he had back in the 1800s, he had all these views of Americans that still apply today. It's just a cultural thing, you know, and it's very funny to me.
So, you know, did you think about maybe visiting in the Palestinian territories or visiting or trying like to see what is happening from this side of the border?
Well, that's not my job. That's not why I'm here.
You think you have fans there? You have people?
I have no idea. But what I mean is, that's not what, there are people who do that better than I do. I mean, I get annoyed when I see celebrities. Here's what I feel needs to be done. Well, you're on a sitcom called Who's the Butter or whatever it is. Why would you have any, you know, that a little, so no, that is not my, I can have an opinion, certainly, but it's not my job to get out there, to come to, I'm a guest here. I'm a guest in your home, whether it's on the Palestinian side or I'm here. So for me to go, you know what I think? I've been here 14 hours. And I think what we need to do, you know, yeah.
You really remind me of John Kerry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go. I rest my case. Oh, he got mad at me once. I was doing a political thing in Washington. I saw Kerry sitting in the audience. I said, John, why the long face? And well, he didn't like that. He didn't like that.
So, you know, I will get you back to, do you miss being on TV?
Well, I'm still on TV. I'm just not doing the Tonight Show.
Do you miss? You don't miss?
Well, you know, at some point you shouldn't have to know all of Jay-Z's music. Okay, I mean, I'm 65. Okay, when you're 40 and I'm talking to an attractive woman like you, it's sexy. When you're 65, now I'm the creepy old guy. Okay,
so no, it's still very flattering.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but you know what I'm saying. You have to know when. Just at some point, you go. The show was #1 when I got it. I was lucky enough to keep it #1. I handed it over to Jimmy. He keeps it #1. You don't drive the thing into the ground and then give it to the next person, you know. I mean, so
But some people will say that maybe in a period of time you did have like second thoughts about the idea of leaving the Tonight Show.
Not the second time.
Not the second time?
Not the second. Well, the first time it was sort of, the rug was a bit pulled out from under me. That was a little bit different. But not the second time, no.
You know, I'm going to finish this interview with telling you a dream of mine.
A dream?
Yes.
Oh.
Because growing up, I think one of the people that inspired me the most to see journalism in both ways, like in a serious way and in a funny way, was you.
Oh, well, that's
and
very kind.
One of my dreams were that you will interview me.
Oh, I would interview you?
Yes.
All right.
I don't know about what, but you can finish this interview by a question.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Have you, do you have any performing ambitions other than?
Oh, definitely.
What kind of actress, comedian, what, singer?
Actually, I can tell you that my first inspiration was, and my first intention was to be an actress.
Okay, and what happened there?
My father said, okay, listen, Lucy, it's not going to work out. You're not going to earn a lot of money from being an actress, especially not in Israel. So go find yourself a job.
Right.
Go find yourself, go study something that you can actually earn money from. Right. He didn't understand that, like back then, that money in journalism in Israel, you don't make
yeah, you
a
don't
lot
make
of
it.
it.
Yeah, you don't even, I think you make more money in
yes.
being an actress.
Yes. So, but it's still a hobby.
Huh?
It's still a hobby.
Yeah, well, that's every Jewish parent's nightmare. They go into show business. Oh my God, you'll starve to death.
But I'm Muslim.
Oh, you're Muslim. Oh,
yes.
okay. Okay. Well, but parents are parents. I mean,
yes.
culturally, it's
I have an Arab imam. I say that's like instead of a Yiddish imam, I have an Arab.
Oh, there you go. Okay, but they're still mothers. They still love their children, and that's
the most important.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. You know, like I say, all people remember kindness.
Jay Leno, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good luck with that acting thing.
Maybe, inshallah. I couldn't think of a better way to finish this week with an interview with the incredible Jay Leno. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We will be here next week. Until then, have a great night from the Jaffa Port. Have peace. Good night.